Hello, everyone. Welcome to At Risk International's Global Risk Intelligence Weekly Briefing. My name is Rowan Fisher, Protective Intel Analyst here at Risk International, joined by Ross Hill, Director of Intelligence. Getting started for you today. The anniversary of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol passed last week with no significant disruptions and no reported violence. The largest protests occurred in front of the Supreme Court and consisted of a few dozen gathered to show support for former President Trump and to support the original message of the protests, the Stop the Steal protest. However, domestic violent extremism continues to represent a key threat in 2023. Homeland Security Director Alejandro Mayorkas has recently stated that the growth of extremist thinking and the threat of individuals taking action has increased dramatically. DHS recently reissued the National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin, and the report stated that lone offenders and small groups motivated by a range of ideological beliefs and or personal grievances continue to pose a persistent and lethal threat. Individuals such as the 19-year-old gunman who recently pleaded guilty to murder for the May 2022 shooting spree in Buffalo, New York, is a prime example. The bulletin also warns that the U.S. is in a heightened threat environment. An increasing level of anti-government sentiment is also causing significant concern. Groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers continue to recruit, organize, and call for civil war. In Germany, police arrested 25 people linked to a plot to overthrow the German government by the far-right Reichsbürger group, which reminds us that domestic extremism is an international problem. Lastly, to meet the increasing threat of domestic extremism, the U.S. Justice Department launched a new domestic terrorism unit to combat the threat. Additionally, there have been calls for local, state, and federal officials to increase information sharing and to create more public-private partnerships. And now I will pass you over to Ross Hill. Ross.
Thanks, Roman. So it's been a pretty interesting 24 hours in Brazil. On Sunday, we had thousands of supporters of the former President Jair Bolsonaro storm the country's Congress, the presidential palace, and the Supreme Court in the capital, Brasilia. The protesters claim the October presidential election, where Bolsonaro was beaten, was stolen. Police managed to retake control of the three buildings after about 5 hours or so, arresting somewhere between 200 and 400 protesters, depending on which reports you read, and seizing 40 buses that had been used to transport the protesters to the location. The occupation of the government buildings had actually been planned for at least a couple of weeks by Bolsonaro supporters using social media and messaging platforms such as Telegram and Twitter. So it was known about in advance, but it appears that the authorities didn't really do anything about it. And then there's been some criticism of security forces for appearing to actually collude with the protesters at points. There's obviously a similarity with the storming of America's Capitol on January 6, 2021 by Trump supporters. That's not necessarily a coincidence. And maybe the timing happening just this weekend around the anniversary of the Capitol event, that's probably not much of a coincidence either. Bolsonaro has frequently used similar inflammatory rhetoric about stolen elections that was often used by Trump, and he's been compared to Trump quite frequently as well, although Bolsonaro did actually condemn the violence quite quickly. As a result of the violence taking place, Brazilia's governor has been removed from office for 90 days over security failings. And riot police have been deployed to a camp of Bolsonaro supporters, which is outside Brazilia's army headquarters. Some early reports that some arrests are being carried out there as well. Those supporters have been camped there for a while after Bolsonaro said the army should have intervened in the presidential inauguration that recently took place. Potential for some clashes at that camp if riot police make moves to break it up. That's it from us this week. We hope you enjoyed the content. And as this is our first briefing for 2023, we wish you all a happy new year.